There are a few points that I think come up quickly when I discuss psalmody with a person. And they're things that, by bringing them up, they can help clarify and anticipate objections to make more progress in talking about why we use Psalms. The first one is that there is something called the Lord's Day, the Christian Sabbath. One day in seven is set apart as holy for the public and private worship of God. And so once we recognize that, we see, okay, the Lord's Day is different than other days. And so we're not asking what songs do we sing on just Monday through Saturday. We're asking what songs are we singing on the Lord's Day. And that's the second point. On the Lord's Day, there's public worship, which is also a different category than, say, private worship. And so we're called into the presence of God, into the worship of God. We come out of the 6 days of the worldly engagements and we come into the presence of God. And this public worship uses the Word of God. And again, that anticipates some objections because people might say, well, wait, so are you saying the only songs we ever sing are the Psalms? On driving to work, with friends, at a restaurant, only Psalms? Well, no, we're talking specifically. That's a second issue. What do you listen to the other days? We can talk about that in a separate context of what's edifying. But right now we're talking about on the Lord's Day. And that gets to the third point, which is sort of the regular principle of worship, but I would phrase it as this God is the one who decides how he is worshiped. We don't decide how God is worshiped. In fact, that inclination is part of our sinful nature, and it's what you see throughout the scriptures of how humans get into either idolatry, in the case of unbelievers, or compromising with idolatry in the case of believers, bringing in some of the idols into the temple of God because they say, well, this is how God should accept worship. And so we recognize as we come into the church, we're coming in as sinners who need Christ, and they need to be instructed. And we humble ourselves before God, and we receive his instruction that comes through his word. And that's what we do in preaching. We preach from the word of God, not from Aristotle or John Stuart Mill. We preach from the word of God, and we sing the songs that God gave us. It's very clear that God gave a book of songs. No one doubts that. And most Christians would say it's their favorite book. Across denominations, across branches of the church, they'd say the Psalms are my favorite. But I just won't sing them on Sunday because something holds them back. Instead of receiving the instruction from God. And that also gets to this idea of sola scriptura, fourth point, last point here. Sola scriptura. We have many ways that we try to hide the Bible. We know that the medieval church did that by only using Latin, and the people didn't know Latin. But there are many ways today that we hide the Bible.